Training versus prompting. If you've ever wondered about training AI in your company data, this video is going to save you from a very expensive misunderstanding. Let's make sense of what's actually possible and what you really need. Here's something heard constantly from business owners exploring AI. Can we train ChatGPT on our company documents? And look, it sounds perfectly reasonable. You want the AI to know about your products, your policies, your processes. That makes total sense. But here's the thing. That question reveals a fundamental confusion about how AI systems work. And it's not your fault. The tech industry has been terrible at making these distinctions clear. The language is genuinely confusing, and people use terms like training very loosely in casual conversation. So let's untangle this, because understanding the difference between training and prompting will completely change how you think about AI for your business. When you say train it on our data, there are actually three major misconceptions packed into that one request. First, you don't actually want to train AI in the technical sense. Training is about building the model itself from scratch, not teaching it about your specific business. That's like saying you want to rebuild a car's engine from the ground up when you really need is directions to your destination. Second, you can't train ChatGPT even if you wanted to. It's already finished. It's a completed product that you're using, not something you can modify or rebuild. OpenAI trained it once, and that phase is over. And third, and this is the most important part, what you actually want is something completely different and much more achievable. You want the AI to be able to access and reference your company information when it responds. That's not training, that's an entirely different thing with entirely different solutions. So let's define these two terms clearly because they're often used interchangeably when they shouldn't be. Training is building the AI. It's the process of creating the fundamental model by exposing it to massive data sets. That's what OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and other AI companies do to build their models from the ground up. They're not teaching it about individual businesses. They're teaching it how language works, how to reason, how to understand context. Think of it like constructing the engine of a car. It's done once at the factory with specialized equipment and expertise. Once that engine is built, it's finished. Prompting is using that AI. It's giving instructions to context to an already built model. Every time you type a message to ChatGPT or any AI assistant, you're prompting. You're not changing the model, you're operating it. Going back to the car analogy, prompting is like driving. You're giving directions, telling it where to go, providing the information it needs to get you to your destination. The car already exists, you're just using it. Let's dig into what training actually involves, because once you understand the scale of it, you'll realize why it's not what you need. When researchers train a model like GPT-5, they're showing it billions of examples, vast portions of the internet, books, articles, scientific papers, code repositories. They're not teaching it specific facts like company X sells product Y for $199. They're teaching it the fundamental patterns of how language works, how concepts relate to each other, how to maintain context, and how to generate responses that make sense. And this happens before the model ever interacts with a single user. Training is the foundation that makes the model capable of understanding anything you might say to it later. It's why ChatGPT can understand questions about medieval history, modern physics, business strategy, and cooking recipes because it learned the underlying patterns of how all these domains work. Your company documents weren't part of that original training, and they don't need to be. The model already knows how to understand and work with the kind of information you're going to give it. It just needs access to that information when you ask questions. Let me give you a sense of what training actually requires because the scale is genuinely hard to comprehend. We're talking about over 100 billion words of text. For context, that's like reading the entire contents of the Library of Congress several times over. More than 10,000 specialized graphics processors running in parallel. Months of continuous computation, 24/7 without interruption. And the total cost? Over $100 million for a single model. These numbers aren't exaggerations or estimates. That is genuinely what it takes to train a state-of-the-art AI model. This is one of the most resource-intensive computational tasks that exists. It's why only a handful of companies in the entire world can do it. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta. Companies with massive budgets and specialized infrastructures. So when someone casually suggests, let's train an AI on our company docs, they're unknowingly suggesting something that would cost more than most businesses make in revenue for an entire year. And here's the thing, you don't need any of this to make AI work with your data. Here's something crucial to understand about training. It's not an ongoing process, it's a one time event. OpenAI spends months and millions of dollars to train GPT-5. When that's done, the model is complete. Training stops. What happens after that is completely different. Millions of people around the world use that same trained model by giving it prompts. Your company documents weren't part of that original training data. They can't be added to the model retroactively. The training phase is over. The model is done. It's like asking to add new ingredients to a cake that's already been baked, and that's not how it works. And that's actually good news because it means you're not trying to modify something that can't be modified. You're just trying to use it effectively with your data, which is a completely different and much more achievable goal. Now let's talk about prompting, which is what you actually do every time you interact with AI. Prompting is giving instructions and information to an already trained model so it can apply its learned patterns to your specific situation. Every message you type to ChatGPT is a prompt. You're not changing the underlying model, you're using it. You're providing context, asking questions, giving instructions that help AI understand what you need. The model then applies everything it learned during the original training phase to understand your prompt and generate a relevant response. And here's the key part, your prompt is temporary. It exists for that conversation, and then it's gone. The AI doesn't remember it for the next time unless you're continuing the same conversation. Each new chat starts fresh. Unlike training, which happens once and costs millions, prompting happens billions of times per day and costs fractions of a penny. This is the fundamental way everyone interacts with AI, and it's remarkably accessible. Every conversation follows the same pattern. You provide your question plus any relevant context. The AI processes that using all the patterns it learned during training. You get an answer based on both what the model knows and what you told it in your prompt. Then you can continue with follow ups or start fresh with a new conversation. This pattern repeats billions of times a day across millions of users, and it works. The model doesn't need to be retrained for each person or each question. It just applies the existing capabilities to each unique situation. So here's where the miscommunication happens. When business owners say train, they're thinking about teaching. It's a natural word choice. You train employees, you train pets, you train yourself to develop new skills. Training means teaching, right? But when AI professionals hear train, they're thinking about an incredibly expensive one time model building we just discussed. They're thinking months of computation and eight-figure budgets. Same word, completely different meaning. And this translation gap caused real confusion in business conversations about AI. Someone proposes a reasonable solution. The AI consultant either quotes an absurdly high price or tries to redirect to something that sounds completely different from what was asked for. But here's the good news. What you actually want is simpler, cheaper, and more effective than training anyway. Let's be direct about why you can't train ChatGPT even if you wanted to. First, it's already trained. ChatGPT is a finished product. The training phase ended before OpenAI released it to the public. When you sign up for ChatGPT, you're not getting access to something still being built, you're using something that's complete. Second, you don't own it. OpenAI owns ChatGPT. You can't modify their model any more than you could rewrite Microsoft's Word's underlying code. You're a user of their product, not their creator. And third, even if you somehow could do it, training costs millions of dollars. You'd need specialized hardware, months of time, and expertise that costs a fortune to hire. It's completely unnecessary for what you're trying to accomplish. The confusion happens because training sounds like something that should be accessible. But in the AI world, it's a specific technical term for something that's already happened that can't be undone. So let's cut through all the confusion and get to what you actually need. You want AI to have access to your data when it responds. That's it. That's the real need behind can we train it on our data. You want the AI to be able to reference your company information, your product catalog, your policies, your procedures, your customer data, whatever's relevant when it's answering questions or helping with tasks. This is completely reasonable and completely achievable, but it has nothing to do with training the model. It's about giving the model the right context at the right time. The model already knows how to work with information like yours. It learned that during training. You just need to make that information available when you're using the model. And there are three main approaches to making your company data available to AI systems, and they differ pretty dramatically in complexity and use case. First, you can include the information directly in your prompts. This is simpler than it sounds and works great for certain situations. Second, you can use systems that automatically fetch relevant information and include it for you. This is what most people actually need when they say they want to train it. And third, there's something called fine tuning, which is a specialized technique that most businesses won't need. Let's walk through each one so you understand which one makes sense for your situation. Simplest approach is including the information directly in your conversation with the AI. Look at the example on the slide. Someone's asking which product would work for a 15-person marketing agency, but they've also provided the product catalog right there in the prompt, what each product costs, what it's best for. The AI uses that information to give a relevant answer. This works well when you have small amounts of information that you reference regularly. Maybe your pricing structure, your return policy, key product specifications. You can create templates that include this information, then just fill in the specific question. The limitation is obvious. You're manually copying and pasting for each conversation. That's fine for occasional use, but it doesn't scale. You can't copy your entire knowledge base into every prompt. And if your information changes frequently, you've got to update all your templates. Despite these limitations, direct prompting is powerful and underutilized. Many businesses could solve their immediate AI needs just by getting better at including the right context in their prompts. Now, if you have a large knowledge base, hundreds of documents, extensive product catalogs, comprehensive policy manuals, you need something more sophisticated. That's where RAG comes in. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Don't worry about the technical term. The concept is straightforward. A system automatically finds the relevant information from your documents and includes it in the prompt before the AI responds. Look at the flow on this slide. You ask a question about your return policy for enterprise customers. The system searches your knowledge base, finds that specific policy document, and feeds it to the AI as context. The AI then responds using that policy information, giving you an accurate answer. This is what most businesses actually need when they say train it on our data. RAG lets you maintain all your company information in one place, and the AI pulls from it automatically. No manual copy pasting, no template maintenance, no forgetting to include the right context. We'll cover RAG in detail in a future video, but just know it exists and it's likely the right solution for your use case. And then there's fine tuning, which is the most commonly misunderstood option. Fine tuning is not teaching the AI facts about your business. It's for adjusting how it responds, not what it knows. You use fine tuning when you need very specific formatting, a particular writing tone, or specialized response structures that are hard to achieve with prompting alone. For example, if you need every AI response to follow an exact format, specific sections, particular phrasing, consistent structure, fine tuning might help. Or if you're building a customer service system that needs to match your brand voice perfectly every time. But notice what's not on that list. Teaching it about your products, your policies, or your business operations. That's not what fine tuning does. For that, you want prompting or RAG. Most businesses won't need fine tuning. If you're just starting with AI, focusing on prompting and RAG is your first choice. Fine tuning is a more advanced technique for specialized use cases. So, how do you decide which approach makes sense for your situation? If you have a small amount of data that you use repeatedly, like pricing information, return policies, or product specifications, just include that in your prompts. Create templates to make it easy. This covers a lot of everyday business use cases, and it's the simplest option. If you have a large knowledge base you need to query, hundreds of documents, extensive catalogs, comprehensive manuals, that's when you want a RAG system. These automatically find and include relevant information, which is what most businesses actually need. And if you need the AI to respond in a very specific format or style that's difficult to achieve with prompting alone, then explore fine tuning. But try through prompting first. It's more flexible and capable than most people realize. The key is matching the solution to your actual need, not to what sounds most impressive or sophisticated. All right, here's what you need to remember from all this. Stop saying, can we train AI on our data? This creates confusion because training means something very specific and very expensive that you don't need. You're asking for something that costs millions when what you want costs pennies. Start asking, how can AI access our data when responding? This gets to the heart of what you actually want and opens up the right conversations with the right solutions. And here's the reality. Most solutions come down to better prompting or RAG systems. These approaches are more accessible, more flexible, and more cost effective than training could ever be for your use case. The language around AI is generally confusing, and this misconception is incredibly common. You're not alone in this misunderstanding. But now that you know the difference, you can have much more productive conversations about what AI can actually do for your business. Let's connect this back to the fundamental concept from our very first video in this series. Training is when the AI learns patterns from billions of examples. This is that one-time massive computational process where it learns how language works, how concepts relate to each other, how to generate coherent responses. That's when the patterns get built. Prompting is when it applies those learned patterns to your specific situation. It's completing the pattern you've started with your question or instruction. The pattern already exists, it's just using them. And your company data? That's not new patterns to learn. It's context that helps the AI apply its existing patterns more accurately to your specific needs. The AI doesn't need to be trained on your data to use it effectively. It just needs access to the data as context when it's doing the pattern completion work it was already trained to do. Everything it learned about how to work with your information is already there. You're just giving it the specific information to work with. All right, that's it. This is part of our Making AI Make Sense series where we cut through the jargon to explain what's actually happening with AI and what it means for your business. If you found any of this helpful, subscribe and stay up to date with new episodes. We've got practical AI education coming that builds on these foundations. And if you're trying to figure out the right AI approach for your specific business needs, whether it's better prompting, setting up a RAG system, or something completely different, we offer consultation services to help you navigate the options and implement solutions that actually work for your situation. You can find us over at eauclaireai.com. We're Eau Claire AI, your path to AI made clear.